I'm gonna pray for you. Thank you for inviting me into your home as a total stranger. But I'm gonna pray for you, and this is what's gonna happen. As a sign to you that God is with you and God's gonna help Ayden, when we pray, the atmosphere in this room is gonna change. You're gonna feel warmth come over you. It's like your skin's gonna tingle. I'm just telling y'all this in advance because I don't want you to freak out like it's something that I'm doing. It's not. It's God doing it. It's just His sign, His way of showing up to say, hey, I'm with you. I know what you're going through. I've got your back. I'm gonna bring you through it. So to make a long story short, you know, it was just one of those things with me getting connected with Coach. Is I was a football guy. I was just going to approach you from being a football guy. I want to help you just because we got this whole football commonality going. Him playing college football, I played college football. Him coaching, I'm coaching, and so I just approached him from that perspective. And but really, like I had seen God do so many real miracles where people had cancer, were prayed for, and the cancer went back to the doctors. The cancer was totally gone out of our body. We had cases where people were unresponsive, no pulse, that were prayed for, and God brought those people back. So I just had seen some things that it let me know that God, when you invite Him into your situation, He will come in and He will help. It's just up to us. We have to give Him the invite. And so when you guys invited me, and that's kind of the thought process that I had coming.
So how that happened was Keegan Zeibel from down here in Slater, his mom had told Bobby about Ayden. And so, we were home at that time. Aaron had gone down to his mom and dad's house. Ayden was heading that way. And, we had already had all of these huge fundraisers and all this kind of stuff. So we had a lot of stuff in the house. And I'm sitting up at the house by myself. And I see this. Y'all ever seen The Green Mile? Okay. And so I see this huge man coming up onto our front porch, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what do I do? And Ayden's walking out the door. I go, no, Ayden, go get your dad. There's somebody up here. I don't have any idea who this man is. And so Ayden runs down and gets Aaron, and I'm just going, oh my gosh. And Bobby introduces himself, and I'm just like, okay, so I bring him on in, and then, Bobby tells us who he is and what's going on and how he would just like to pray with us. And so he did. He came in, he prayed with us, and, we stood up and got in a circle and held hands and started praying. Well, at first, I kind of kept one eye open. I thought, if he's going to bang me over the back of the head with something and take everything, you know what? We're okay. I'll go out praying. I'm okay with that. But at the same time, we also said once, after Bobby had left, you just kind of felt relief. But at the same time, we're never going to turn down somebody who wants to pray. Ever.
Bring it on.
Ever,
Bring it on.
Yeah.
So talk about the breakthroughs. So there's medical breakthroughs, the type of chemo he was given, but there are other medical breakthroughs, the things that they've done for Ayden that were only done on adults up to this point, and how those medical breakthroughs have now started to help other kids.
So here's the perfect storm thing. So when we talk about the perfect things that happened to get us to where we're at, and here we have this doctor that's going to be more aggressive than anybody else, and we found out later on that a lot of the chemo she was using on him wasn't even approved for his type of cancer, but she knew it, and she just had that knowledge, that supernatural knowledge that chemo was going to work. And so I know God had a hand in her decision on what chemo to use. And I remember when we did our first scan after, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 rounds of chemo, and she said, well, he's handling it fairly well, and the cancer is not spreading. So she said, I picked the right one. And I thought, oh my gosh, you were like deciding over 2 or 3 different kinds. But she had picked the right one. Well, how does she pick the right one without some kind of knowledge? Obviously her medical knowledge, but also some supernatural knowledge. And so we went through that, but then we got to a point, and this was that rock bottom point where I feel like I was saved, and I thought he was a goner, and we'd done a scan, and there just hadn't been improvements for a couple times.
Plus his kidneys were starting to kind
Yeah,
of
and his
fight
kidneys,
back,
we're having a hard time with the chemo.
flushing it all out. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she said, we need to take a break from the chemo. And we're like, oh, okay. This might be, but we were at 6 months at that point. And so we felt blessed to have another 3 months more than what we thought we were gonna have. He still didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so, and then
It was at that point that I started getting on Facebook. Now, not Facebook, but just the internet. Now, I can tell you that Dr. Manling told us, do not ever, ever, ever Google his cancer. Because it doesn't even relate to him because he is, a child and this is an adult form of cancer. She goes, so everything that you're gonna read about won't pertain to him. My sister even messaged me one day, said, hey, what's the name of his cancer? Well, I knew exactly what she was gonna do, and I wouldn't tell her. I said, I'm not gonna tell you, because I know what you're gonna do, and you don't need to know about it, and I'm just not gonna tell you. And so, anyway, so at that point, you start to become your child's advocate at this point. And because they wanted to just stop for a while, let his body rest, I thought, well, I can't just stop. And so I got online and I started researching all of the trials that were around the world. And so I actually got onto the database and I could sign up. And so I still get them right now. About once a month, I get about 1,500 new trials that are out, and I can search through those. I think at some point I could probably take my master's degree and turn it into a doctor degree for with medical stuff because of all the stuff that we're reading through it. But what we would do is I'd go through, I'd find anything that related with what he had. I'd print it all off. I would have our friend Dr. Song look it over, and then we would take it straight up to Dr. Manling. And she said she was completely open, if we ever found anything, to bring it up to her so she could look it over and see if she could get more information on it. Well, one of the things that I found was about an ablation. And there was 3 types of ablations that they could possibly do. And she took that information, Dr. Manling did, and gave it to the radiologist up there and looked it over. And Ayden they ended up doing the ablation. Ablation is where they go in and actually burn the tumor out. And so he was the first child to have the ablation done. And so they were writing, they did a 3D image of his liver before with the tumor in it. It was about the size of a softball. And then after. And then they did the ablation, and it kills the tumor. It doesn't take it out, but it just kills it. And so she's written up all of these medical journals and articles, and he is now, out in all of these medical journals, and they take his 3D images of his liver and stuff to conferences because they've started using this now on all kinds of cancers now.
And so you kind of explained to me, so over the last 16 months, we've gone from me being a stranger on the porch to, really, I would call you guys my friends. We just never became disconnected. Every time there was been a report of any kind, anything you need prayed for, I get all the prayer chains going, praying. So we just remained connected during this time. But during one of our conversations, you talked about cancer research and the funding for cancer research and how a certain percentage of it is for adults and a certain percentage of it is for kids, where this probably would have never came up to be funded if it hadn't been for your research and going through that for Ayden. So talk about what those statistics were as far as percentages go, and then the kids now that are starting to have ablation done as a result of your research.
As of right now, the government, what it finances for cancer, pediatric cancer only gets 4% of the government funding, where all of the other goes to adult cancer. So 4% there's only been 2 new chemo treatments for children in the last 20 years. So the children's part of it, and cancer is a leading cause of death in children, overall, pediatric cancer. So it's, what is it, how many kids are diagnosed?
700 a day
Yeah,
in the United States. World or United States?
Worldwide, yeah. So like 40-something are diagnosed a day with cancer, children, just children alone. So back to his ablation, they went in, did the ablation. The doctor was very happy with what had happened. He was, you know, like I said, the first one that did it. I know since then there's been a couple of other children at Children's Mercy that have had it done. One child's, from what I understood, didn't go as well, but the others have been fine. Since that ablation had happened, they did bring in a 3D imaging machine. Children's Mercy bought it, so they could start you know, being able to take these things to conferences to help with research for children's cancer. So he is, you know, we call him famous for that.
He's a medical breakthrough, really,
Yeah.
in his realm of cancer. That ablation that they did, they brought that machine in just for him, and they call it the Ayden machine. And I can't imagine how many thousands or maybe millions of dollars that machine costs, because you know, it's an instrument where they use a
Microwave.
Yeah, MRI, like MRI is going on at the same time, and they're guiding this needle into the tumor, and then they heat the tip of that needle and they burn this tumor. And they'd never used that in the pediatric world. They'd used it in the adult world, but not in the pediatric world. So he was a medical breakthrough on that. And they said if everything goes well with him, then they were going to make the final purchase on that machine and hire a specialist just for Children's Mercy. And so when we were talking to Ayden about that, we said, Ayden, this is kind of experimental, this is new. How do you feel about it? And what did you say?
I was like, go for it. I don't care if I'll be in pain. I just want to get rid of this cancer.
And you'll do it if what?
I'd do it at any cost, even if I cry.
What were you proud about? You were going to do what? What was this going to do?
I was going to save millions of kids' lives with this.
Yeah, he said, if this will help save other children's lives, he said, do it.
Yep.
I'm all in for it. And so there he is, you know, he's a pleaser.
Yeah.
And so did the ablation.
Then after the ablation, they did a biopsy of it later.
And it was
Yeah, go ahead.
It was dead. And then we got to the point where, okay, that tumor was dead, and we were trying to figure out what we're going to do. Well, first of all, the chemo had shrunk the cancer out of his pancreas, because they thought it had gone into his pancreas, and it had been, and that was going to be a whole other deal, but it had shrunk it out of the pancreas. And so now we're left with this golf ball, or this softball-sized dead tumor in his liver, a tumor by his heart. And when they say by his heart, they were afraid that it had grown into his heart. A tumor between one of the main arteries that feeds the liver and the aorta. It was sitting right in the junction of those two arteries. And he had these spots in his lungs. Well, there was some disagreement in the hospital about those spots. And
In the lungs.
right,
In the lungs.
and the spots in the lungs. And so some of them thought it was cancer, some of them didn't. And then we finally got Dr. Manling, and we kind of had to do some convincing on her part that maybe that was cancer, but it was dead. And because it wasn't growing, and it wasn't shrinking, it wasn't doing anything, it was sitting there. And so she finally kind of gave into that fact, and which led us to,
Well, we also had Darren Howe here, who said if you were to take children's scans just here in like the Saline County, the farming community area, he said you would be surprised at the number of kids whose scans would come back with spots in their lungs because of the simple fact that we're in a farming community. And, you know, the kids are outside playing all the time, so they're inhaling that stuff, he said. So there is a good chance that a lot of it could be just, what, I don't know what all could be, just,
it could be, from the dust in the
Yeah,
air,
the dust,
the
whatever,
agricultural dust. And so then that led us to the surgery. And they have never done a surgery on a child like this at Children's Mercy. So this is a whole other breakthrough. And so they're willing to kind of experiment on him because we're willing to do whatever it takes
Well, yeah.
to save him.
but the doctor, we'd never met him before, Dr. Hendrickson, we had talked with Darren, how about it too. And he said, you need to make sure you go in and you tell your doctor that we don't care what you got to do, get it out. He said, you've got to let them know that you will do whatever, and so will Ayden.
So here we are, the perfect storm. We had all these people in place. We had the right people. Then all of a sudden, this ablation comes available, which had never been available before. So there was another part of the storm. And then we have this surgeon who's going to do this surgery that he said would not be offered at any other hospital.
Another hospital wouldn't
But
do
we'll
it.
offer it. He said, I'm willing to do it because I have a 12-year-old boy, and I understand how important it is, and I want to save his life. I
He'd
want to help
actually
save
talked
his
to
life.
Ayden. He brought Ayden in and wanted to talk to him and ask him if he knew what was going to happen and what was going on. And once he got done talking to Ayden,
He said, yeah, he said, he told him, he said, if this tumor's grown into your heart, it's probably going to kill you. And this is telling a 12-year-old boy. So that's our first obstacle. If the tumor by the aorta,
if I nick it,
if I nick the aorta, because we're talking like a millimeter away from the aorta, if I nick that, you're a goner.
I can't stop it.
If I start cutting on the liver and the liver decides to shut down, you're a goner. So here's all these things that are going to kill him. And the doctor's telling him that. And Ayden just looked at him stone cold and said, get her done. And he said, just do it. Get it out. I'm ready. And I mean, it was just that unshakable faith. And he's had that faith, the faith of a child the whole time. And that kind of leads us to the next kind of, we talked about the visitation when we wrapped the cloak around him. And we were just amazed, what honor to have that experience. But then he had another experience, and this is when the other experience happened. So we're back at that bad news hotel, and we're getting ready for surgery because we don't want to drive up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're getting ready to go to bed, and we all kind of nod off to sleep the best we can. And what happens, Ayden?
I am in that same dark area, and I'm alone again, and I don't see anyone this time, but I can hear a voice that says, it'll be okay, they will find some more spots, but it'll be okay.
So the crazy part with that is Dr. Hendrickson had come out and had said that they're going to go in with the scope first to look around to see if there were any other cancer spots before they started the actual surgery. He said if they saw more cancer spots, they would more than likely just not even do the surgery at all. So they go in, do the scope. We get a phone call. We're all waiting in the waiting room. We get a phone call, and they said that they saw nothing else. The surgery has started. And great. So anyway, every once in a while we get phone calls to go into a room, another little room, and we either wait for a phone call from the doctor to tell us how things were going, or the doctor would actually come in and talk to us. And so we knew that they had done the surgery, they were working through the surgery. And then the doctor came in later and had said that once they got in there, they did find a few more spots on his diaphragm. But when they had gone through and done the scope, they didn't see those. And so after surgery, before we met Ayden, after surgery, the doctor came out and he said, my goal is to make sure this child graduates high school. And so he came out and said that he had gotten everything that he could possibly see. They took every single organ out of his body in his cavity and went through each of them by hand, felt through them, looked at them, did that twice. And while he was talking to us, he said Ayden is back in the operating room full of water. They had him completely full and just soaking in water. The theory with some of the surgeons is they believe that cancer cells are like sponges. They want to soak it all up, and they can't stop themselves from soaking up this water, and they burst and kill themselves. And so he soaked for a good hour and a half back there while the doctor was talking to us and they were doing other things. So after surgery was over with, he was being wheeled out.
Okay. All right, so he had this vision again, and it was in that darkness, and the voice said, there's going to be some more spots, but it's going to be okay. He hadn't told us anything. And so we're just kind of going along, with with the surgery and everything, and we meet him in it's called the grand meeting hall, where you meet your loved one after surgery. And we come out, and he's going like this, and he goes, I'm cancer-free, I'm cancer-free. And I said, well, buddy, you are, but there's something we kind of have to tell you. And I don't know why I felt like I needed to tell him this. Coming out of surgery, still all, discombobulated from the anesthesia and stuff. But I just felt like I had to tell him. And I said, Ayden, I said, they got it all, but I said, they found a few more little spots. And he said, I know, Dad. And I said, oh. I said, did Dr. Hendrickson tell you? He goes, no. I said, well, did the nurses tell you? And I'm looking at the nurses, and the nurses are looking at me like, like, how does he know this? And I go, well, Ayden, how do you know? And he goes, God told me, Dad. And I didn't know what to believe, and I said, well, Ayden, next time God speaks to you, you can't keep that from me. You gotta tell me. This is not right. Don't hold me away from the knowledge. But he had given Ayden that vision, and it's just been it's been a miracle. So a breakthrough in the ablation, a breakthrough in his treatments, a medical breakthrough in his surgery, and here we are today with a boy that has a clean, cancer-free skin. And
I want to make sure that, we have to keep going for scans. Every 3 months for a while we'll be doing scans. His home health nurses, Jackie and Angie, are back here. And so they still are coming because he has to have his port flushed every month, and they do labs once a month on him. So instead of us having to go to Kansas City, Jackie and Angie can just come over to the house and do all of that there, so he doesn't miss a lot of school.
And nobody touches him except
No, yeah, those two are the only two that can touch him. But yes, we have to go every 3 months for scans still. Our next scan is April 15th, and we just keep our fingers crossed and pray that everything is still good and that the cancer stays away.
Just one of the things I wanted you guys to share is kind of this whole community and the acts of kindness. You guys talked about that, and you talked about all the wonderful things that people have done. But like our final questions around like words of encouragement that you would have for families that are experiencing maybe a health crisis with a child exactly like what you're going through with Ayden, that you went through with Ayden. Maybe it's some other thing that they're going through. And this is just, for any member of the family that's kind of walk through this case with Ayden. So what words of encouragement would you, give to those who are going through life crises of different forms?
Don't turn away anybody that wants to help. They're doing it out of kindness and out of their heart. So you will be overwhelmed with the support that people want to give you. Let them do it. Just let them do it, because your mind is not in the right place at the time. Let them help in any way possible. We were amazed at how not just Marshall, but Slater, Northwest, Sedalia, all of the communities came together, and people that we didn't even know. He was getting letters and still getting letters from people in Kansas City just saying, hey, we're praying for you. We had tons of prayer shawls made and sent to us. I rotate blankets, pretty well weekly, washing, every week I'm washing blankets, putting new ones out because of all of the support that we have gotten. For me, I would just personally say, don't turn people away. Just know they're there trying to help in any way possible.
Every time I tell a story, a different message pops in my head. And I have 1,000, I'm a deep thinker. Probably not as deep as some of you, but for me it's deep. But some of the things that go through my head with this situation is, you have to have the faith of a child, and he had that faith, and he's not a child anymore. He had to grow up really fast and face some things that we don't have to face until we're well into our years, hopefully. But you have to have the faith. And like for me, it wasn't necessarily, I didn't have the faith of a child to begin with when this whole thing started. But when you're down and out, when your back's against the wall, when you feel like there is no more hope left in the world, when you feel like this is it, this is the end, when you get to that point, God's there for you. He's there for you. And He was there for me in that moment in my life. He was there for Ayden. I think He was there for each one of us in this family at some point in time. He's there. And I'm not a minister or anything, but from my personal experience, I believe you have to completely surrender your heart to God. And it's not just saying, okay, I surrender. Okay, I open my heart. I mean, that's the beginning of it. But you have to completely surrender. And when you do, He's there. He's in that darkness. He was in that darkness for Ayden twice. And He's there for us, all of us. And that's, I don't know, you know, each time a different message comes to my heart. But that's why we wanted to do this today. You know, just to give that message of hope. We're fighters. And you have to be fighters. And you have to know that He's got your back. God's got your back. Jesus has got your back.
And you got to be your child's fighter too.
Yeah, and you know, it may seem like the end of the world. It's not. It's not. And we're only here for a nanosecond, and we know where we want to spend eternity. And make God our priority. That was important to me too. That was another message: is, you know, make God number one. And that's what we did, and that's what we did for Ayden. And I know now, no matter what happens in our lives, we're going to be fine. And so that, you know, that's just what was in my heart today. But there's always something different.
But if you guys ever have any, you know, questions or anything about if something like this were to ever happen, you know, feel free to get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to, you know, tell you what we did, where we went, you know, who we called, who we talked to, that kind of thing.
And you know, looking around the room here, we know so many of you, and so many of you have been a part of this story with us from the very beginning. And I just can't tell you how much it means to us, and people that we never knew would be all in with us. And we are just so thankful. You helped save our child's life. I mean that. You helped save his life. And how can you thank somebody for saving your child's life? I don't know how. But this is where we're beginning, because we want to give the message. And so this is where we begin, with thanking, and hopefully giving that hope to other people.
So you're thinking the same thing I am, looking back at grandparents, aunt, uncle. What are the words of hope, inspiration, encouragement you have for people that are facing different crises, and now that you've gone through this? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to give you an opportunity to share your heart.
I cannot imagine going through, well, life itself, but I certainly cannot imagine going through something like this without faith. I think of those who somehow or another have turned themselves off to the idea of God and Jesus and the things that, as far as I'm concerned, make life worth living. And I know all of us have turned to the Lord countless times and continue to do so. And knowing that our family is wrapped in God's love has helped us to come through this whole thing. You look back and you think, how did we get through it? And it was with God's love and God's power.
Anyone else? Okay. What we're going to do, let's just stand, we'll close the prayer. Yes, sir.
Ayden, do you have any words of encouragement? And these are things we don't ask Ayden very much, to be honest. We kind of put words in his mouth, I'm sorry. Words of encouragement.
Don't ever think you're going to lose. Keep your mind in the right place. If you don't, then you're screwed.
But if you do, keep your mind in the right place.
If you keep your mind in the right place, what's going to happen? You're going to what?
You're going to win. You do.
So, let's give that I knew it was coming. Go and sit on up here with me, Ayden. This is what we're going to do. This is the challenge that we have for you today. Is I want you to do this. I want you to go home. I mean, for us, our daughter's off in college. They're 23, 21, 19. We got an older daughter. And when I heard 3 months,